The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the general store, and Victoria Carson pressed her gloved hand against the window, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her corset. South Pass City, Wyoming Territory stretched before her in the late afternoon sun of June, 1876. All dust and wooden buildings and mountains rising in the distance like silent guardians. She had traveled over 1,000 miles to reach this place, and with every mile, she had prayed that her past would not follow. The driver opened the door and offered his weathered hand. Victoria took it, stepping down onto the packed earth street, her traveling dress dusty despite her best efforts to keep it clean. She carried only one small trunk, everything she owned in the world now reduced to a few dresses, a Bible her mother had given her, and the letters that had brought her here. Letters from a man named Daniel Hayes, a rancher who needed a wife and had been willing to correspond with a woman from Philadelphia he had never met. The town was smaller than she had imagined, though she supposed most places would seem small after the crowded streets of Philadelphia. A few buildings lined the main street, including a saloon from which piano music drifted, the general store, what appeared to be a boarding house, and a church with a modest steeple. Men in dusty work clothes moved along the wooden sidewalks, and a few women in practical calico dresses hurried about their business. Everyone seemed to glance her way, curiosity plain on their faces. Strangers were noticed here. "Miss Carson," a voice called from behind her, deep and uncertain. Victoria turned and felt her breath catch. The man who stood there was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that spoke of hard physical labor. He wore denim trousers, a worn cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. When he removed the hat, she saw dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of the summer sky that regarded her with equal parts hope and apprehension. He was perhaps 30 years old, weathered by sun and wind but undeniably handsome in a rugged way that no gentleman in Philadelphia could match. "Mr. Hayes?" she asked, though she knew it must be him. "Yes, madam, Daniel Hayes." He twisted the hat in his hands and she realized he was nervous. Somehow that made her own nervousness ease slightly. "I hope your journey was not too difficult. It was long, but I am here now." She smiled, trying to convey a confidence she did not entirely feel. Daniel gestured to a wagon hitched nearby, pulled by 2 sturdy horses. "I have the wagon ready. The ranch is about an hour's ride from town. I thought if you are willing we could see Reverend Matthews now. He is expecting us. But if you need time to rest or think, I understand. This is a big decision." Victoria had known this moment would come. Daniel's last letter had been clear he needed a wife who could help run the ranch, someone practical and strong. He had been honest that he expected them to marry quickly upon her arrival. She had agreed in her letters, though now that the moment was here, her mouth went dry. But what choice did she have? She could not go back to Philadelphia. She could never go back. "I am ready, Mr. Hayes," she said quietly. "I gave you my word in my letters, and I mean to keep it." Something shifted in his expression, relief mixed with what might have been respect. "Then let us go see the Reverend, and please call me Daniel. We will be married soon enough, no need for formality." "Victoria," she offered in return, "or Vicky if you prefer." "Victoria suits you," he said, and there was warmth in his voice now. "It is a strong name." They walked side by side toward the small church, her trunk left temporarily with the store owner who promised to watch it. As they moved through the town, Victoria felt the weight of curious stares. She kept her chin up, her back straight, the way her mother had taught her. "A lady never shows fear or uncertainty," her mother had always said. Though her mother was gone now, dead these past 2 years, and Victoria wondered what she would think of her only daughter traveling west to marry a stranger. The church was simple inside, with wooden pews and a plain cross at the front. Reverend Matthews was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He greeted them warmly, showing no surprise at the hasty nature of the wedding. Victoria supposed he had seen many such marriages out here on the frontier. "You both come to this union willingly?" the Reverend asked, looking between them. "Yes," Daniel said firmly. Victoria felt a moment of panic, her past rising up like a specter. But she pushed it down and forced herself to answer. "Yes." The ceremony was brief. Daniel had no ring to give her, but he held her hand gently as they spoke their vows, his calloused palm warm against hers. When the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, Daniel leaned down and pressed a chaste kiss to her cheek, his stubble rough against her skin. "Welcome to Wyoming, Mrs. Hayes," he said softly. "Mrs. Hayes. A new name for a new life." Victoria held onto that thought as they left the church and collected her trunk from the general store. Daniel loaded it into the back of the wagon with ease, then helped her up onto the seat. He climbed up beside her and took the reins, clicking his tongue to get the horses moving. They rode in silence for a while, leaving South Pass City behind. The landscape opened up around them, vast and untamed in a way that made Victoria's chest tight. Rolling hills covered in sagebrush stretched toward mountains still capped with snow despite the summer heat. The sky seemed endless, a brilliant blue unmarred by the smoke and haze of city factories. It was beautiful in a stark, lonely way. "The ranch is called the Double H," Daniel finally said, breaking the silence. "It was my father's and his father's before him. I run cattle mostly, about 200 head right now. I have 2 hired men who help during roundup and branding, but most of the year it is just me." He paused. "Just me until now." "It sounds like hard work," Victoria said carefully. "It is. I will not lie to you about that. Ranch life is not easy, especially out here. The winters are brutal, and sometimes we lose cattle to weather or predators. But the land is mine, and there is something to be said for that." He glanced at her. "I hope you are not expecting an easy life." "I am not afraid of hard work, Daniel." That much was true. She had worked hard in Philadelphia, though the work she had done there was not something she would ever tell him about. "Good." He seemed satisfied with that answer. "I should tell you what I am expecting from this arrangement. I need a wife who can help with the ranch work when needed, who can cook and keep house, and who will not complain about the isolation. We are a ways from town, and sometimes days go by without seeing another soul. Some women cannot handle that. I understand. And I would like children eventually. A ranch needs heirs." He said this matter-of-factly, but she saw color rise in his tanned cheeks. "But there is no rush. I figure we should get to know each other first." Relief flooded through Victoria. She had been worried that he would expect her in his bed immediately, before she had even caught her breath from the journey. "That seems wise." They fell back into silence, but it was more comfortable now. Victoria found herself stealing glances at her new husband. He had a strong profile, with a straight nose and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. His hands on the reins were confident and sure. There was something solid about him, dependable. She hoped that would extend to keeping her secrets safe. The ranch house came into view as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. It was larger than she had expected, a 2-story structure made of logs with a wide porch across the front. Outbuildings dotted the property: a barn, a chicken coop, what looked like a bunkhouse, and various sheds. Cattle grazed in the distance, dark shapes against the golden grass. "It is not much," Daniel said, and she heard defensiveness in his voice. "It is wonderful," Victoria said honestly. Compared to the tiny, dark room she had rented in Philadelphia, this place looked like a palace. Daniel brought the wagon to a stop in front of the house and jumped down, then came around to help her. His hands went to her waist, and he lifted her down as if she weighed nothing. For a moment, they stood close together, and Victoria caught the scent of him, leather and horses and clean sweat. It was not unpleasant. He stepped back quickly and grabbed her trunk. "Let me show you inside." The interior of the house was neat but clearly the domain of a man living alone. The main room served as both kitchen and sitting area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. A table and chairs sat near the kitchen area, and a worn sofa faced the fireplace. Everything was clean but sparse, lacking the small touches a woman might add. "Your bedroom is upstairs," Daniel said, carrying her trunk toward a staircase. "There are 2 rooms up there. I have been sleeping in the one on the right, so I figure you can take the one on the left. It has a nice view of the mountains." So they would have separate rooms. Victoria felt another wave of relief. "That sounds fine." She followed him up the stairs, noting how the wood creaked under their weight. The bedroom he showed her was simple but adequate, with a bed covered in a worn quilt, a dresser, and a washstand. The window did indeed offer a stunning view of the distant peaks. "I will let you get settled," Daniel said, setting down her trunk. "I need to check on the stock before dark. There is food in the kitchen if you are hungry, bread and some cold beef. Help yourself to anything." "Thank you, Daniel." He nodded and left, his boots heavy on the stairs. Victoria sat down on the bed and finally allowed herself to release the breath she had been holding all day. She had done it. She had traveled halfway across the country and married a stranger, and now she was Mrs. Daniel Hayes, a rancher's wife in Wyoming territory. But as the adrenaline of the day faded, her past crept back into her thoughts. She stood and went to her trunk, opening it with trembling hands. Beneath her few dresses and personal items, wrapped in a flour sack, was a small leather pouch. She opened it and looked at the contents. More money than a respectable woman should have. Certainly more than a working-class woman from Philadelphia should possess. Money that she had taken when she fled, money that was not entirely hers to take. She had stolen from Marcus Colton, one of the most powerful and dangerous men in Philadelphia. She had been his mistress for 2 years, kept in a fancy apartment, dressed in silk and jewels, displayed at his private parties. She had hated every moment of it, but after her mother's death left her penniless and alone, it had seemed like the only option. Marcus had promised to take care of her, and he had in his way. But he had also been cruel and possessive, and when she had finally worked up the courage to leave, she had taken enough money to ensure she could disappear completely. If Marcus ever found her, she did not know what he would do, but she knew it would not be good. Victoria quickly wrapped the money back up and hid it at the bottom of her trunk beneath a false bottom she had installed herself. Then she stood and smoothed down her dress, forcing herself to breathe slowly. She was Victoria Hayes now, not Victoria Carson, not Marcus Colton's mistress. She was a rancher's wife in Wyoming territory, over 1,000 miles from Philadelphia. Marcus would never find her here. He could not. She went downstairs and found the food Daniel had mentioned. The bread was fresh, likely from town, and the cold beef was tender and well seasoned. She ate standing at the kitchen counter, too nervous to sit. Through the window, she could see Daniel in the distance, walking among the cattle. He moved with purpose and confidence, a man who knew his place in the world. She wondered what he would think if he knew the truth about her. Would he be disgusted? Angry? Would he send her back? No. She could never let him find out. By the time Daniel returned to the house, the sun had set completely and stars were beginning to appear in the vast sky. Victoria had lit lamps and was washing the dishes she had used, still feeling her way around this strange new kitchen. "You did not have to do that," Daniel said, removing his hat and hanging it on a peg by the door. "You must be exhausted from your journey." "I wanted to be useful," Victoria said. "Besides, I am not used to sitting idle." "What kind of work did you do in Philadelphia?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. She had prepared for this question. "I worked as a seamstress and also helped care for my mother when she fell ill. After she passed, I had no family left and little money. That is when I decided to answer the advertisement for a mail-order bride." It was close enough to the truth. She had been a seamstress once, before her mother's illness had consumed all their savings and forced Victoria into darker choices. "I am sorry about your mother," Daniel said quietly. "I lost my own parents 5 years back. Influenza took them both within a week of each other. I know what it is like to be alone." There was genuine sympathy in his voice, and Victoria felt a pang of guilt for her deception. "It is hard," she agreed, "but perhaps we can be less alone together." Daniel smiled then, a real smile that transformed his serious face. "I would like that." They stood there in the lamplight, two lonely people trying to find their way toward something like companionship, if not love. Victoria thought that maybe, just maybe, this could work. Maybe she could build a real life here, a good life, far away from Marcus Colton and the woman she had been forced to become. "You should rest," Daniel said after a moment. "Tomorrow I will show you around the ranch properly, introduce you to the animals. But tonight, sleep. You have earned it." Victoria nodded and bid him good night, climbing the stairs to her new room. She changed into her nightgown and climbed into the bed, which was surprisingly comfortable. Through the window, she could see the mountains silhouetted against the star-filled sky, and despite everything, she felt a small flicker of something that might have been hope. The next morning, Victoria woke to the sound of a rooster crowing and sunlight streaming through her window. For a moment she was disoriented, forgetting where she was, but then memory returned. She was in Wyoming. She was married. She was safe. She dressed quickly in one of her practical dresses and went downstairs. Daniel was already up, standing at the stove with a skillet in hand. The smell of bacon filled the air. "Good morning," he said when he saw her. "I hope I did not wake you. I am used to getting up with the sun." "It is fine. I should adjust to ranch hours anyway." She moved to help him, but he waved her away. "Today you are a guest. Tomorrow you can start being a ranch wife." His tone was teasing, and she found herself smiling. They ate breakfast together at the wooden table, and Daniel told her about his plans for the day. He needed to check the fence line in the eastern pasture, and he wanted to show her around the property first. Victoria listened, feeling more relaxed than she had in months. There was something peaceful about this place, about Daniel's steady presence. After breakfast, he took her outside and introduced her to the livestock. There were chickens scratching in their coop, which would be her responsibility to feed and collect eggs from. 2 milk cows stood in the barn, placid and patient. Several horses occupied stalls, including the 2 that had pulled the wagon yesterday. "This is Copper," Daniel said, stroking the nose of a beautiful chestnut mare. "She is the gentlest of the bunch. I thought she would be good for you to ride once you are ready." "I have never ridden a horse," Victoria admitted. "I will teach you. Out here, you need to know how to ride. What if you need to get to town and I am not around?" He said it practically, but she appreciated that he was thinking of her independence. They spent the morning walking the property, and Victoria was amazed by the sheer size of it. Daniel owned nearly 500 acres, he told her, though only a portion was currently being used for grazing. The rest was just wild land, beautiful and untouched. He showed her the creek that ran through the property, cold and clear, fed by mountain snowmelt. He pointed out landmarks and told her stories about the land, about his father and grandfather who had built this place from nothing. They came here in '48, during the gold rush, Daniel explained as they stood on a small rise overlooking the ranch. They did not find much gold, but they found this valley and decided it was worth more than any amount of gold. They built the original cabin where the barn is now, and over the years they expanded, bought more land, built the house. It was not easy, but they made it work. You must be proud of them, Victoria said. I am, and I want to honor what they built by keeping this place going, making it thrive. He looked at her. That is why I needed a wife, not just for companionship, though that matters too, but because a ranch like this needs a family to run it. I am not getting any younger, and I cannot do it all alone forever. Victoria understood what he was not saying. He was 30 years old and had been alone for 5 years since his parents died. He wanted children, heirs to pass the ranch to. He wanted a partner to share the burden and the joys of this life. It was practical, but there was something honest about it that she appreciated. He was not pretending this was a grand romance. He was being realistic about what they both needed. I will do my best to be the partner you need, she said sincerely. I believe you will. He smiled at her, and she felt warmth spread through her chest. Maybe she could even come to care for this man in time. Maybe that would be enough to wash away the stains of her past. The days began to blur together in a pleasant routine. Victoria threw herself into learning her new role as a ranch wife. She took over the cooking, which Daniel seemed grateful for even though he was too polite to say his own cooking had been barely adequate. She learned to make bread from scratch, to fry chicken, to prepare the beef and pork that came from their own animals. She collected eggs each morning and learned to milk the cows, though the first few times her hands ached terribly from the unfamiliar motion. Daniel was patient with her, teaching her without condescension. He showed her how to feed the animals, how to tell if one of the chickens was sick, how to check the horse's hooves for stones. He began teaching her to ride, starting with just sitting on Copper while the mare stood still, then slowly progressing to walking around the corral. You are doing well, he told her one afternoon, after she had successfully ridden Copper at a trot around the corral without falling off. Better than I expected, honestly. Were your expectations so low? She asked, slightly offended. No, I just meant you are a city woman. I did not expect you to take to this life so easily. He looked genuinely impressed. Most women from back east struggle more with the adjustment. Victoria felt a flush of pleasure at his praise, but also a twinge of guilt. She was not struggling because she had learned long ago how to adapt, how to survive in whatever circumstances she found herself in. It was a skill she had developed during her time with Marcus, learning to be whatever he needed her to be, but she could not tell Daniel that. As the weeks passed, Victoria found herself falling into a comfortable rhythm with her husband. They worked side by side during the day, and in the evenings they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set behind the mountains. Daniel would tell her stories about the ranch, about the town, about Wyoming territory. She learned that South Pass City had been much larger during the gold rush, but as the gold played out, many people had left. Those who remained were hardy, determined to make a life here regardless of the hardships. Daniel told her about his neighbors, though they were spread far apart out here. The Martins had a ranch about 10 miles north, and the Johnsons had a small farm to the south. There were other families scattered throughout the area, and Victoria began to understand the importance of community in a place so isolated. When someone needed help, everyone came. When there was a celebration, everyone attended. It was different from the anonymous crowds of Philadelphia, and Victoria found she liked it. One evening, nearly a month after her arrival, they were sitting on the porch when Daniel said something that made her heart skip a beat. There is a dance in town this Saturday, a social at the church. I was thinking we could go, let people meet you properly. He glanced at her. Unless you would rather not. I know you have been settling in and social events can be overwhelming. Victoria's first instinct was to refuse. The more people she met, the more questions there might be. But she also knew that refusing would seem strange. A new bride should want to meet her husband's neighbors and friends. Besides, hiding would only make her seem suspicious. I would like that, she said, hoping her voice sounded more confident than she felt. Daniel smiled. Good. It will be nice to show you off a bit. Let everyone see what a lucky man I am. The compliment made her blush. Over the past month, Daniel had been nothing but kind and respectful. He had not pushed her to share his bed, had not demanded anything from her except her help with the ranch work. She found herself growing fond of him, appreciating his steady nature and dry sense of humor. Sometimes, she caught him looking at her with an expression she could not quite read, something warm and wondering, and it made her stomach flutter in a way that was both pleasant and frightening. Saturday arrived too quickly. Victoria dressed in her best dress, a dark blue silk that she had brought from Philadelphia. It was finer than anything the ranch women probably wore, but it was the nicest thing she owned, and she wanted to make a good impression. She pinned her dark hair up carefully and even applied a touch of rouge to her cheeks, something she had not done since leaving the city. When she came downstairs, Daniel stopped in his tracks and stared at her. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice rough. "Thank you." She felt suddenly shy under his gaze. They rode to town in the wagon, the journey passing in comfortable silence. When they arrived, the church was already full of people. Lanterns hung from the trees outside and music drifted out into the warm evening air. Victoria took Daniel's offered arm and let him lead her inside. The room fell quiet for a moment when they entered, all eyes turning to look at the new bride. Victoria kept her chin up and her smile in place, even as her heart pounded. Then a woman bustled forward, round-faced and smiling. "You must be Victoria. I am Sarah Martin. My husband Tom and I have the ranch north of the Double H. We are so pleased to finally meet you." She grabbed Victoria's hands warmly. "Daniel has been alone too long. It is wonderful that he found someone." Other introductions followed in a blur. Tom Martin, a jovial man with a beard. The Johnsons, a young couple with 3 small children. Reverend Matthews and his wife. The schoolteacher, a spinster named Miss Peters who looked at Victoria with sharp, assessing eyes. The shopkeeper from the general store. The blacksmith. The doctor. So many names and faces that Victoria's head spun, but everyone was welcoming. The women wanted to know about her journey, about what she thought of Wyoming, about her plans for the ranch house. The men clapped Daniel on the back and made jokes about married life. Victoria found herself relaxing despite her earlier fears. These were good people, simple people who had no connection to her past life. When the music started, Daniel asked her to dance. Victoria hesitated. She had learned to dance in Marcus's world, waltzes and complicated steps meant to impress. But this was simpler, country dances and reels. Daniel led her through the steps patiently, and she found herself laughing as they spun around the floor. "You are a good dancer," she told him during a break in the music. "My mother insisted I learn. Said even a rancher should know how to dance properly." His eyes were warm as he looked down at her. "I am glad she did." They danced several more times, and between dances, Victoria talked with the other women. Sarah Martin was particularly friendly, inviting her to a quilting circle that met once a month. Victoria accepted, knowing it was expected, and found that she was actually looking forward to it. These women seemed genuinely kind, eager to welcome her into their community. As the evening wore on, Victoria finally began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had truly escaped her past. She was a different person here. She was Mrs. Victoria Hayes, a rancher's wife, a respectable woman with a good husband and a bright future. Marcus Colton in Philadelphia might as well have been on the moon for all the connection they had to this life. But then, as she stood near the refreshment table getting a glass of punch, she overheard two men talking nearby. They did not realize she could hear them, or perhaps they did not care. "Heard there was a man in town asking questions yesterday," one said. "Stranger from back east somewhere." Well-dressed fellow looked out of place. Victoria's hand froze on the ladle. "What kind of questions?" the second man asked. "About newcomers. Particularly women who might have arrived recently. Said he was looking for someone, a woman who ran off with something valuable of his." Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. The room seemed to tilt around her. No, it could not be. Marcus could not have found her, not here, not now. "What did you tell him?" the second man asked. "Nothing. Told him I did not know anything about it. Jim over at the store said the same. We do not talk about our neighbors to strangers, especially suspicious types from back east." "Good man." They moved away, still talking, and Victoria stood frozen in place. Her mind raced. A man asking questions about a woman who had taken something valuable. That had to be someone working for Marcus. She had been so careful, had covered her tracks so well. How had he found her, Victoria? Daniel's voice broke through her panic. He was at her side, concern on his face. "Are you all right? You look pale." "I am fine," she said automatically, but her voice shook. "I think I just need some air." Daniel immediately took her arm and guided her outside, away from the crowd. The cool night air helped clear her head slightly, but the panic remained, coiling in her stomach like a snake. "What is wrong?" Daniel asked gently. "Did someone say something to upset you?" No. I just felt faint for a moment. It was warm inside, and I am not used to so many people." She forced a smile, but she could tell he did not believe her. Daniel studied her face for a long moment. "Victoria, if something is wrong, you can tell me. If someone has been unkind to you, nothing like that. Everyone has been wonderful, I promise." She took a shaky breath. "I think I would just like to go home now, if that is all right." "Of course." He did not press her further, though she could see the questions in his eyes. They said their goodbyes and climbed into the wagon. The ride back to the ranch was silent, but it was not the comfortable silence they had shared before. Victoria could feel Daniel's concern, could feel him wanting to ask what had really happened. But he did not push, and she was grateful for that, even as guilt gnawed at her. When they arrived home, Victoria went straight to her room, claiming exhaustion. She sat on her bed in the darkness and tried to think. If Marcus had sent someone looking for her, they clearly had not found her yet. The men at the dance had not given her away, had protected her privacy, even not knowing why it might need protecting. That was something. But how long before this man, whoever he was, found out about Daniel's mail-order bride? How long before he put the pieces together? South Pass City was small. There were not many places to hide. She could run again. Take the money from her trunk and disappear into the night. But the thought made her chest ache. She did not want to run. For the first time in years, she had found a place that felt like it could be home. She had a husband who was kind and respectful, a life that was honest and good. The thought of leaving it all behind, of going back to running and hiding, was unbearable. But what choice did she have? She could not let Daniel find out the truth. The shame of it would destroy any chance at the life she was building here. And if Marcus's man found her, if Marcus himself came for her, she did not know what would happen. Marcus was not a man who let things go, especially things he considered his property. There was a soft knock on her door. "Victoria," Daniel's voice was quiet. "May I come in?" She wanted to say no, to keep him out, to protect him from the mess that was her life. but she found herself saying yes. Daniel entered carrying a lamp. He closed the door behind him and stood there awkwardly for a moment before sitting in the chair by the window. "I know something is wrong. You do not have to tell me what it is, but I want you to know that you are safe here. Whatever it is, whatever happened, you are my wife now and I will protect you." His words were so simple, so sincere that Victoria felt tears spring to her eyes. "You do not know what you are saying. Then tell me, help me understand." She shook her head. "I cannot." "You would hate me if you knew. Try me." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Victoria, I am not a fool. I know that women do not typically become mail-order brides unless they are running from something or towards something. I did not ask questions because I figured everyone deserves a fresh start. But if someone is after you, if someone means you harm, I need to know about it." Victoria felt something crack inside her. She was so tired of carrying this secret alone, so tired of the fear. Maybe it was the stress of the evening, or maybe it was the genuine concern in Daniel's eyes, but she found herself speaking. "There was a man in Philadelphia. His name was Marcus Colton. He is wealthy, powerful, connected." She forced herself to look at Daniel as she spoke. "I was his mistress for 2 years. She watched Daniel's face, waiting for disgust or anger, but his expression remained neutral. "Go on." "My mother was dying. We had no money for doctors or medicine. I had been working as a seamstress, but it was not enough. Marcus offered to help to take care of everything if I would be his companion. I was desperate and foolish, and I agreed." The words came faster now, years of shame and regret pouring out. "He was not a kind man. He was possessive and cruel, but he kept his word about taking care of my mother. When she finally passed 2 years later, I wanted to leave, but Marcus would not let me go. He said I belonged to him." "But you escaped," Daniel said quietly. "I stole money from him, quite a lot of it, and I ran. I used a different name to book passage west, covered my tracks as best I could. But Marcus is not the kind of man who forgives betrayal. Tonight at the dance, I overheard men talking about a stranger in town asking questions about a woman who stole something valuable." She met Daniel's eyes. "That is Marcus's man. He has found me somehow." The silence stretched out between them. Victoria held her breath, waiting for Daniel to tell her to leave, to say that he had not signed up for this kind of trouble. But when he finally spoke, his words were not at all what she expected. "We all get a fresh start here." She blinked at him. "What?" "This is Wyoming territory. What you did back in Philadelphia, why you did it, that is your past. Out here, we do not judge people by where they came from or what they had to do to survive. We judge them by who they are now." He stood and moved closer to her. "The woman I have gotten to know this past month is honest, hardworking, kind. That is the Victoria I married. The rest is just history. But Marcus Colton has no power here. This is not his world." Daniel's voice was firm. "You are my wife now, under the law of Wyoming territory. That means something, and if this man he sent comes around, he will have to answer to me. You do not understand. Marcus is dangerous. He has money and influence. He could what? Have me arrested for protecting my own wife. On what charge?" Daniel shook his head. "I have dealt with men who thought their money made them powerful. Out here, money does not mean much. What matters is whether you are willing to work hard and treat people fairly. From what you have told me, this Marcus Colton is neither of those things." Victoria felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I do not deserve your kindness. I have lied to you. You protected yourself. That is different." He reached out and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. "Victoria, I will not pretend I am not surprised by what you have told me. But I am not angry, and I certainly do not hate you. If anything, I admire your courage for getting away from a bad situation. I am not brave. I am a coward who ran away." Running away takes courage too sometimes. He sat down beside her on the bed, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough that she could feel his warmth. Here is what we are going to do. Tomorrow I will go into town and talk to the sheriff. I will explain that you may be followed by someone from your past who means you harm. The sheriff is a good man. He will keep an eye out for this stranger, and if the man comes to our ranch, he will find that ranch wives in Wyoming are protected by both their husbands and the law. Daniel, I do not want to bring trouble to you. You are not bringing trouble. Someone else is trying to cause trouble, and we are going to deal with it together. He took her hand, his grip warm and solid. You are not alone anymore, Victoria. You have a husband now and neighbors who have already accepted you as one of their own. We take care of each other out here. Victoria wanted to believe him, but fear still gnawed at her. What if Marcus comes himself? What if he tries to take me back? Then he will discover that kidnapping a man's wife is a hanging offense in Wyoming. Daniel's voice was hard. You are not his property, Victoria. You never were, no matter what he told you. You are your own person, and now you are also my wife. That makes you untouchable as far as I am concerned. The certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction that he would protect her, made something shift inside Victoria's chest. She had been alone for so long, had relied only on herself for years. The idea that someone else would stand beside her, would fight for her, was overwhelming. Why are you doing this? She whispered. You barely know me. I know enough. And you are my wife. That is reason enough. He squeezed her hand gently. Besides, I like you, Victoria. This past month with you has been the happiest I have been in years. I am not about to let some rich bully from Philadelphia ruin that. Victoria let out a shaky laugh that was half sob. You are a good man, Daniel Hayes. I try to be. He smiled at her, and in the lamplight she saw such warmth and sincerity in his face that her heart ached. Now try to get some rest. Tomorrow we will start dealing with this properly. But tonight know that you are safe here. I promise you that. He stood to leave, but Victoria reached out and caught his hand. Daniel, thank you for listening, for not judging, for everything. You do not need to thank me. We are partners now in all things. He squeezed her hand once more and then left, closing the door softly behind him. Victoria lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She still felt afraid, but beneath the fear was something else. Something that felt like hope. True to his word, Daniel rode into town the next morning to speak with the sheriff. Victoria spent the day trying to keep busy, but her mind would not settle. She baked bread, collected eggs, weeded the small vegetable garden she had started. But all the while, she kept glancing toward the road, half expecting to see a stranger riding toward the ranch. Daniel returned in the late afternoon and found her sitting on the porch, mending one of his shirts. He climbed down from his horse and sat beside her. I spoke with Sheriff Coleman. He remembers the stranger, said the man left town yesterday heading south. The sheriff got the impression he was planning to check other towns in the territory. Daniel took off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. I told him about your situation, left out the specific details but made it clear that someone from your past might be looking for you. He said if this man comes back, he will handle it. Do you trust him? With my life. John Coleman is one of the best men I know. He will not let anything happen to you. Daniel paused. I also spoke with Tom Martin and a few other neighbors. Told them basically the same thing, that you might have someone from your past causing trouble. They are all on alert. If this man shows up asking questions, they will protect you. Victoria set down her mending. You told them. I did not tell them the details, just that you left a bad situation back east and someone might be trying to drag you back into it. That is all they need to know. He looked at her seriously. These people are your neighbors now, Victoria, your community. They will protect their own. She felt tears prick her eyes again. I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything. This is just how things are done out here. He stood and offered his hand. Come on, help me feed the horses. Keeping busy will help. They fell into their evening routine, and Victoria tried to let the familiar tasks soothe her nerves. Daniel was right that staying busy helped. By the time they sat down to dinner, she felt almost normal again. Over the next several days, Victoria waited for disaster to strike, but nothing happened. No strangers appeared at the ranch. Daniel made regular trips to town and always returned with the same report. No one matching the description of Marcus's man had been seen. Slowly, Victoria began to relax, to believe that maybe the man had given up and moved on. A week after the dance, Sarah Martin rode up to the ranch in a wagon, her cheerful face appearing at the door just as Victoria finished the breakfast dishes. Good morning. I hope I am not intruding, but I thought you might like some company. I brought fabric for the quilting project we discussed at the dance. Sarah bustled in without waiting for an invitation, her arms full of colorful cloth. Victoria found herself smiling despite her lingering worries. Sarah's energy was infectious. You are always welcome. Let me make some tea. The two women spent the morning working on quilt squares and talking. Sarah chattered about her children, who were nearly grown now, about her husband's plans to expand their herd, about the upcoming harvest festival in town. She asked Victoria about her life in Philadelphia, but the questions were general and kind, seeking no details that Victoria might not want to share. I am glad Daniel found you, Sarah said at one point, threading her needle. He has been alone too long. A ranch like the Double H needs a family. He has mentioned wanting children, Victoria said carefully. Of course he does. Every man out here wants sons to help with the work and daughters to dote on. Sarah smiled knowingly. But children come in their own time. No need to rush. Better to build a strong foundation first. Victoria appreciated the older woman's wisdom. She and Daniel had still not shared a bed, still maintained their separate rooms. But she had noticed changes between them. He touched her more often now, casual touches like a hand on her shoulder or guiding her with a palm at her back. He smiled at her frequently, and sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression that made her pulse quicken. She found herself watching him too, admiring the way he moved, the strength in his arms as he worked, the kindness in his eyes. She was beginning to have feelings for him, real feelings that went beyond gratitude or respect. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. After Sarah left, promising to visit again soon, Victoria went about her afternoon chores. Daniel was working on repairing a section of fence in the north pasture and would not return until evening. The house felt empty without him, and Victoria realized with some surprise that she missed his presence. She was in the kitchen starting dinner preparations when she heard the sound of a horse approaching. Thinking Daniel had returned early, she wiped her hands on her apron and went to the door. But the man who dismounted in front of the house was not Daniel. He was tall and thin, dressed in a fine suit that looked completely out of place on a Wyoming ranch. His face was narrow and calculating, with cold eyes that swept over the property with obvious disdain. Victoria's blood turned to ice. She did not recognize this specific man, but she knew what he was, one of Marcus's people. "Good afternoon," the man said, his Eastern accent pronounced. "I am looking for Daniel Hayes. He is not here at present." Victoria kept her voice steady with effort. "I am Mrs. Hayes." "May I help you with something?" The man's eyes narrowed, studying her face. "Mrs. Hayes, how convenient. I am looking for someone, a woman who might have traveled to this area recently. Perhaps you have seen her." Dark hair, approximately 22 years of age, might be using the name Victoria Carson. Victoria felt her heart hammering but forced herself to remain calm. I am afraid I do not know anyone by that name. As you can see, we are quite isolated out here. We do not see many travelers. Is that so? The man stepped closer, and Victoria resisted the urge to back away. It is interesting, Mrs. Hayes. I heard in town that Daniel Hayes recently married a mail-order bride from back east. Dark-haired woman arrived about 6 weeks ago. Quite a coincidence. Wyoming is full of dark-haired women, sir. And many men out here marry mail-order brides. There is nothing unusual about it. She crossed her arms. Now, if you have no legitimate business here, I must ask you to leave. My husband does not appreciate strangers bothering me when he is away. The man's smile was unpleasant. I am sure he does not, but I think we both know who you really are, Miss Carson. Mr. Colton has been very worried about you. He simply wants you to return home where you belong. I am home. Victoria lifted her chin. I am Victoria Hayes, wife of Daniel Hayes. Whatever business Mr. Colton thinks he has with me is finished. I do not know what he told you, but I owe him nothing. You owe him quite a lot of money, actually. Money that you stole when you ran away like a thief in the night. The man's voice hardened. Mr. Colton is prepared to be lenient if you return voluntarily. He is even willing to forget about the stolen money if you come back and resume your position. But if you refuse, he will pursue legal action. I doubt your new husband would appreciate learning that he married a thief. Fear and anger warred inside Victoria. The money I took was compensation for 2 years of my life that Marcus Colton stole from me. I owe him nothing, and I will not be going back. You can tell him that. The man took another step forward, close enough now that Victoria could smell the pomade in his hair. You do not have a choice, Miss Carson. One way or another, you are coming back with me. She is not going anywhere. Victoria nearly cried with relief at the sound of Daniel's voice. He stood near the barn, and she had no idea how long he had been there or how much he had heard. In his hands, he held a rifle, not pointed at the stranger but held in a way that suggested he could raise it very quickly if needed. The stranger turned, his expression shifting to something more calculating. You must be Mr. Hayes. I apologize for the intrusion. I was just explaining to Miss Carson here that she needs to return to Philadelphia with me. That is Mrs. Hayes, and she is not going anywhere. Daniel moved closer, the rifle still held ready. I heard what you said, about Marcus Colton, about money, about trying to take my wife away. None of that is going to happen. Mr. Hayes, I understand this is awkward, but the woman you married is not who you think she is. She is a thief and he paused delicately. Well, a woman of questionable virtue. Surely you do not want someone like that as your wife. What I want is for you to get off my land. Daniel's voice was hard as stone. Victoria is my wife, legally married. What she did before she came here is none of your concern or mine. And if Marcus Colton thinks he can send hired thugs to harass a respectable married woman, he is going to find himself in a world of trouble. The stranger's eyes flickered between Daniel and Victoria. Mr. Colton is a powerful man. He has connections, resources. You are just a rancher in the middle of nowhere. This is not a fight you want. Actually, it is exactly the fight I want. Daniel's smile was not friendly. See, out here in Wyoming, we have different ideas about what makes a person respectable. We do not care much about Eastern money or Eastern social rules. What we care about is whether someone is honest and hardworking and treats people fairly. Victoria is all those things. She is part of this community now, and we protect our own. You cannot. I can and I will. Now you have 2 choices. You can leave right now, ride back to wherever you came from and tell Marcus Colton that Victoria is not coming back. Or I can have the sheriff arrest you for trespassing and threatening a woman. Your choice." The stranger looked at Victoria one more time, and she saw frustration and calculation in his eyes. He was weighing his options, trying to decide if she was worth the trouble. Finally, he shook his head. "Mr. Colton will not be pleased." "I do not care what pleases Mr. Colton. He has no power here." Daniel gestured with the rifle. "Now get on your horse and leave. If I see you on my property again, I will not be so friendly." The man mounted his horse stiffly, his face tight with anger. "This is not over." "Yes, it is." Daniel's voice was final. "Tell your boss that Victoria Hayes is under the protection of her husband and the law of Wyoming territory. If he is smart, he will cut his losses and forget she ever existed." The stranger spurred his horse and galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Victoria stood frozen, her legs shaking so badly she thought she might collapse. The moment the man was out of sight, Daniel set down the rifle and moved to her side, steadying her with his hands on her shoulders. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" "No, I am fine, just frightened." She looked up at him. "How long were you there?" "Long enough to hear the important parts. I was coming back from checking the fence when I saw the horse. Something did not feel right, so I approached quietly." His hands tightened slightly on her shoulders. "I am sorry I did not get here sooner before he could threaten you. You got here in time. That is what matters." Victoria felt tears threatening again. "Daniel, what if he comes back? What if Marcus sends more men? Then we will deal with them too." "But I do not think he will." Daniel guided her toward the house. "Men like Marcus Colton are bullies. They rely on fear and intimidation. When that does not work, they usually move on to easier targets. You stood up to him, and I stood up to his man. That tells Colton that you are not going to be an easy victim." Inside the house, Daniel made her sit down and brought her a glass of water. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. He knelt in front of her, his face level with hers. "Victoria, listen to me. You are safe here." "I meant every word I said out there. You are my wife, and that means something. No one is going to take you away from here, from this life, from me. Do you understand? I am so sorry I brought this to your door. Stop apologizing. You did nothing wrong." He took the glass from her trembling hands and set it aside, then captured her hands in his. "I know we entered into this marriage for practical reasons. I needed a wife. You needed a fresh start. But these past weeks, having you here, getting to know you, I have started to feel something more. I care about you, Victoria, not just as a wife or a partner, but as a person I am growing to love." Victoria's breath caught. "Daniel, you do not have to say anything back. I am not asking for declarations. I just want you to know that this is not just about honor or duty anymore. This is personal. Someone threatened you today, and it made me realize just how much you have come to mean to me." He squeezed her hands gently. "So no more apologies. No more thinking you are a burden or that you brought trouble. We are in this together now, for better or worse." That is what the vows meant. Victoria felt something break open inside her, something that had been locked away for years. She had spent so long believing that she was damaged, that she was not worthy of genuine love or respect. But Daniel was looking at her like she was precious, like she was worth protecting and cherishing. It was overwhelming. "I care about you too," she whispered. "I have been trying not to, trying to keep some distance, because I did not think I deserved happiness after everything I had done. But I cannot help it. You are kind and good, and everything I thought did not exist in men. I am falling in love with you, Daniel, and it terrifies me." His face lit up with a smile so warm and genuine that it made her chest ache. "Then let us be terrified together." He leaned forward and kissed her, soft and gentle. asking rather than demanding. Victoria kissed him back, pouring all her confused emotions into it: fear and gratitude and hope, and the tentative, fragile beginning of love. His hands came up to cup her face, his touch reverent, and she felt something inside her finally settle into place. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks. Why did you not?" "I was trying to be respectful." "Give you time to adjust." He smiled ruefully. "But I have been going crazy, living in the same house as you, watching you move around my kitchen, seeing you smile. You are beautiful, Victoria, not just on the outside, though you are certainly that, but inside too. Your strength, your determination to build a new life, that is what I fell in love with." Victoria felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but they were good tears, cleansing tears. "I never thought I could have this. A good man, an honest life. I thought I had ruined my chances at happiness." "We all have pasts. What matters is what we do moving forward." He stood and pulled her to her feet, into his arms. She went willingly, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I meant what I told that man. We all get a fresh start here. Your past is your past. All I care about is our future." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other, and Victoria felt the last of her fear begin to drain away. Marcus Colton was 1,000 miles away. His man had been driven off. She was here in Wyoming with a husband who loved her and was willing to fight for her. This was real. This was her life now. Over the next few weeks, Victoria waited for another confrontation, but it never came. The stranger did not return. No one else came asking questions. Daniel made inquiries in town and learned that the man had been seen leaving on the eastbound stage, heading back towards civilization. It seemed that Marcus had decided she was not worth the trouble after all. Victoria allowed herself to truly settle into her new life. She and Daniel moved into his bedroom together, and their marriage became complete in every sense. He was a gentle, considerate lover, patient with her nervousness, and she found joy in the physical intimacy they shared. It was nothing like it had been with Marcus. With Daniel, she felt cherished and valued, an equal partner in their union. The ranch work continued, the seasons beginning their slow turn toward autumn. Victoria learned more every day, becoming confident in her role. She could now ride copper without assistance, could shoot a rifle well enough to scare off predators, could judge when a cow was about to calve. The other ranch wives accepted her completely, and she found herself part of a community in a way she had never experienced before. Sarah Martin became a close friend, visiting regularly and teaching Victoria the skills she needed to thrive in Wyoming. Through Sarah, Victoria met other women, formed bonds, became part of the social fabric of the territory. When they held the monthly quilting circle, Victoria hosted it at the Double H, and her house filled with laughter and conversation. Daniel seemed happier than Victoria had ever seen him. He smiled more, laughed more, touched her constantly as if reassuring himself she was real. At night, they would lie in bed together, and he would tell her his dreams for the ranch, for their future. He wanted to expand the herd, maybe add some sheep. He wanted to build a bigger barn. He wanted to build a life worth passing on to children. On a crisp October evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink, Victoria realized she had something important to tell him. "Daniel, I need to talk to you about something." He turned to her, immediately attentive. "What is it?" "I am pregnant." She said it simply, watching his face for his reaction. For a moment he just stared at her, then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. "Truly, truly. I am about 2 months along, I think. The baby should come in the spring." Daniel let out a whoop of joy and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. When he set her down, he was laughing, his eyes bright. "A baby! We are going to have a baby!" "Are you happy?" she asked, though his reaction made the answer obvious. Happy does not begin to cover it. Victoria, you have given me everything. A partner, a home that feels alive again, and now a child. I cannot believe how lucky I am. "I am the lucky one," she said softly. "You gave me a chance when I did not deserve one. You gave me a fresh start, a new life. You gave me love when I thought I was not capable of being loved. You were always capable of being loved. You just needed to find the right person." He kissed her tenderly. "And I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how much I love you." Winter came to Wyoming, fierce and beautiful. Snow blanketed the ranch, and the work became harder but no less satisfying. Victoria's pregnancy progressed, and Daniel fussed over her constantly, insisting she not overdo it, bringing her cups of tea, rubbing her aching feet in the evenings. She alternated between finding it endearing and exasperating, but mostly she was grateful. The baby was born on a warm April morning in 1877, after a long but uncomplicated labor attended by Sarah Martin and the doctor from town. Victoria labored through the night, Daniel pacing downstairs until Sarah finally took pity on him and let him come up to be with his wife. He held Victoria's hand through the final pushes, and when the baby's cries filled the room, tears streamed down his face. The doctor cleaned and checked the baby, then placed the squirming bundle in Victoria's arms. "You have a son," the doctor announced. Victoria looked down at her son's scrunched red face and felt a love so fierce it took her breath away. He was perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists that waved in the air. Daniel knelt beside the bed, his arm around Victoria, staring at the baby with wonder. "He is beautiful," Daniel whispered. "He looks like you." "He has your nose," Victoria said, smiling despite her exhaustion. What should we name him? They had discussed names for months but never quite decided. Now, looking at her son, Victoria knew what felt right. "Thomas, after your father, Thomas Hayes." Daniel's eyes filled with fresh tears. "My father would have been honored." Little Thomas Hayes proved to be a healthy, hungry baby who kept his parents up at all hours. But neither Victoria nor Daniel minded. The ranch house, which had felt so empty for years, now rang with baby cries and laughter. Neighbors came to visit and bring gifts. Sarah Martin brought a beautiful quilt she had made for the baby. The Johnsons brought preserves and offers to help with anything needed. The community rallied around the new family, as they always did. As Victoria sat in the rocking chair Daniel had built, nursing her son and watching her husband work in the yard outside, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. A year ago, she had been running for her life, terrified and alone, believing that happiness was something that happened to other people. Now she was a wife, a mother, part of a community, deeply loved and loving in return. Marcus Colton seemed like a bad dream from another lifetime. Occasionally she would remember her time in Philadelphia, but it felt distant and unreal, as if it had happened to someone else. In a way, it had. That frightened, desperate young woman was gone. In her place was Victoria Hayes, rancher's wife, mother, valued member of the South Pass City community. One evening, when Thomas was about 6 months old and babbling happily on a blanket on the floor, Daniel came in from the barn and found Victoria standing at the window, watching the sunset. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "How happy I am," she said simply. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for this to be taken away, but every day I wake up and it is still real. It is real. This is your life now, our life." He kissed her temple. "No one is going to take it away. I know, I finally believe that." She turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you, Daniel, for everything. for giving me that fresh start you promised, for loving me despite everything. Not despite everything, because of everything. Your past made you who you are, and who you are is the woman I love." He cupped her face in his hands. "I would not change a thing, because every step of your journey brought you here, to me, to us." Little Thomas chose that moment to let out a demanding cry, and they both laughed. Victoria scooped up their son and handed him to Daniel, watching as her big, strong rancher husband melted into softness while holding their baby. This was what she had been searching for without even knowing it. Not just safety or security, but a family, a home, a love that was real and lasting. The years passed in the way years do on a ranch, measured by seasons and harvests and cattle drives. Thomas grew from a baby to a toddler to a sturdy little boy who followed his father everywhere, already learning the ways of ranching. 2 years after Thomas was born, Victoria delivered a daughter they named Sarah, after the dear friend who had helped Victoria find her place in Wyoming. And 3 years after that, another son, James. The ranch prospered under Daniel and Victoria's joint management. They expanded the herd as planned, added sheep, improved the house and outbuildings. Daniel's dreams of building something worth passing on to his children came true. The Double H became known as one of the best-run ranches in the territory. Victoria's past became truly the past. She never heard from Marcus Colton again, though years later she learned through an old newspaper that he had died in 1882, shot by another man whose mistress Marcus had tried to steal. Victoria felt nothing when she read it, no satisfaction or grief. That part of her life was so far removed from who she had become that it might as well have been a story about a stranger. She became a pillar of the South Pass City community. She helped establish a proper school, taught Sunday school at the church, organized charity drives for families in need. The woman who had once been afraid to meet people's eyes now moved through her community with confidence and grace. No one questioned her past. Out here, people took you at face value. If you worked hard and treated others fairly, that was enough. On a summer evening in 1887, 11 years after Victoria had first arrived in South Pass City, she and Daniel sat on their porch as they had done countless times before. The children were asleep inside, worn out from a day of play and chores. The ranch spread out before them in the fading light, cattle grazing peacefully, mountains standing eternal watch. "You remember the day we met?" Victoria asked, leaning against Daniel's shoulder. "Of course. You stepped off that stagecoach looking terrified but trying to be brave." "I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen," he smiled. "I was so nervous I could barely speak. You hit it well." She laced her fingers through his. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? I hoped, but I did not dare believe I could be this happy." He kissed the top of her head. "You made all my dreams come true, Victoria. You gave me a family, a real home, a reason to work so hard. You made the Double H into something special. We did it together." She looked up at him. "That is what marriage is supposed to be, I think. Two people building something neither could build alone." "When did you become so wise?" "I learned from you," she smiled. "You taught me that I was worth loving, that I deserved happiness. You gave me that fresh start you promised, and I grabbed onto it with both hands and never let go." Daniel pulled her closer, and they sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. Inside the house, they heard one of the children cry out in sleep, then settle. The sounds of their family, their life. "You have any regrets?" Daniel asked quietly. "About leaving Philadelphia, about everything that happened?" Victoria considered the question seriously. "I regret the circumstances that brought me here. I wish my mother had not gotten sick, wish I had not been so desperate that I made the choices I made. But I cannot regret the outcome." If I had not lived through all that, I would not be here now. I would not have you or our children or this life. So no, I do not regret it. Every painful step brought me home. Home, Daniel repeated. Yes, that is exactly right. You are home, and she was. Not just in Wyoming, not just on the Double H Ranch, but here, in Daniel's arms, surrounded by the life they had built together. She had traveled over 1,000 miles, running from a past that had threatened to destroy her. She had arrived broken and afraid, carrying secrets and shame. But Daniel Hayes had looked at her and seen not her past but her potential. He had offered her not just marriage but redemption, not just a home but a family, not just survival but love. We all get a fresh start here. He had told her that first day, and he had meant it. Wyoming had been her salvation, South Pass City her sanctuary, and Daniel her savior and partner in love. She had been Victoria Carson, mistress and thief, running in fear. Now she was Victoria Hayes, wife and mother and respected member of her community, running toward nothing because she had already arrived. The mail-order bride with a secret past had found not just safety but happiness. The lonely rancher who had needed a wife had found not just a partner but a soulmate. Together, they had built something neither could have built alone: a family, a legacy, a love that would endure through all the seasons of their lives. As the moon rose over the mountains and the Wyoming night settled around them, Victoria felt a peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She had been lost, but now she was found. She had been broken, but now she was whole. She had been alone, but now she was loved. The Wild West had given her everything she had thought was lost forever: dignity, purpose, belonging, and most of all, love. Real love, honest love, the kind that saw you at your worst and chose to see your best. Daniel had looked past her shame and seen her strength. He had looked past her fear and seen her courage. He had looked past her past and seen their future. And what a future it had been! What a future it still promised to be! Their children would grow up here in this wild, beautiful land, learning the values their parents held dear: honesty, hard work, community, and the belief that everyone deserves a second chance. The Double H Ranch would thrive and grow, passing from generation to generation. The love between Victoria and Daniel would remain the foundation of it all. Years later, when Victoria was an old woman surrounded by children and grandchildren, she would tell the story of how she came to Wyoming. She would be honest about her past, teaching her granddaughters that mistakes do not define you, that courage means running toward a better life rather than accepting a bad one. She would tell them about their grandfather, the good man who gave her a fresh start and loved her without judgment. She would tell them about the community that protected her and accepted her. She would tell them about the West, where what mattered was not who you had been but who you chose to become. But on this night, with Daniel's arms around her and her children sleeping safely inside, Victoria simply sat and absorbed the moment. The past was behind her, forgiven if not forgotten. The future stretched ahead, full of promise and possibility. But the present, this moment, was perfect. She was exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly who she was meant to be with. The wind carried the scent of sage and pine, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to the moon. The ranch settled into its nighttime rhythms, animals bedding down, the land resting after another day of sun and work. And on the porch of the Double H Ranch, a man and woman sat together in the peace that comes from love freely given and gratefully received. Victoria Carson had become Victoria Hayes, and in doing so, she had become her true self. The frightened woman who stepped off that stagecoach 11 years ago would hardly recognize the confident, happy woman she had become. But Daniel would say he had always seen her potential, had always known the strong, loving woman hidden beneath the fear. He had given her the space and safety to become that woman, and she had grabbed the opportunity with both hands. This was her life now, her real life, the life she had earned through courage and determination and the willingness to believe in second chances. The mail-order bride with a secret past had become simply a bride, a wife, a mother, a valued member of her community. The secrets no longer mattered. The past was truly past, and the lonely rancher who had needed a wife had found so much more: a partner who matched his strength with her own, a lover who brought warmth to his bed and his heart, a friend who understood him completely, and the mother of his children who would carry on his legacy. He had offered her a fresh start, never knowing that she would give him one too, transforming his house into a home and his solitary existence into a life worth living. Together, they had proved that sometimes the best things come from the hardest circumstances. Sometimes you have to travel 1,000 miles to find home. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what really matters. Sometimes the worst parts of your past lead you to the best parts of your future. And sometimes, in the wild west of Wyoming territory, a mail-order bride running from her past and a lonely rancher hoping for a future find each other at exactly the right moment. They build a life together, raise a family together, and prove that love, real love, sees not where you have been but where you are going. Together. As they finally rose and went inside, Daniel's arm around Victoria's waist, the ranch quiet around them, Victoria sent a silent thank you to whatever force had guided her here. To Wyoming, to South Pass City, to the Double H Ranch, to Daniel. She had come seeking safety and found love. She had come seeking a fresh start and found her forever home. She had come carrying secrets and shame and found acceptance and redemption. The door closed behind them, and the ranch settled into its peaceful night. And in the bedroom they shared, as Daniel held her close and whispered his love, Victoria finally let go of the last tiny bit of fear she had carried for so long. She was safe. She was loved. She was home. This was her happily ever after, and it was everything she had ever dreamed of, and more than she had ever thought possible. The mail-order bride had become a beloved wife. The woman with a secret past had become a woman with a beautiful present and a bright future. And the lonely rancher who had said, "We all get a fresh start here," had been absolutely right. They had both gotten their fresh start, and they had built something extraordinary from it. Together, always together, for all the years that followed and all the generations that came after, the story of Daniel and Victoria Hayes would be told as a testament to the power of second chances, the strength of true love, and the promise of the American West, where anyone could reinvent themselves and build a life worth living. And it all started with a woman stepping off a stagecoach, terrified but hopeful, and a man offering his hand and his heart, giving her not just a marriage but a true fresh start. Everything that came after, the family, the legacy, the love, grew from that single moment of courage and compassion. It was, in every sense, a love story for the ages.